Let's take a look at this chart representing, as it does, the three great movements in English poetry in the 16th and 17th century, which was a time when England absolutely exploded with the arts, with the great poetry, with the plays of William Shakespeare and Ben Jonson. It was a time of amazing scientific and artistic achievement. Anyway, there are three kinds of poetry written at that time, and they're very different, highly contrasting, and that's what you're being asked to figure out here. First of all, we'll look at the Elizabethan poetry. Now, the time of Queen Elizabeth, the same Queen Elizabeth of the recent movie, was the time when the Spanish Armada tried to conquer England unsuccessfully. It was the age of great prosperity and power, and the poetry was the poetry that celebrated England, celebrated the countryside. Poems like Marlowe's "Come live with me and be my love, and we shall all the pleasures prove." Also the poetry of William Shakespeare. "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate." The kinds of images that we'll find in these poems are simple, natural pleasures. We've got flowers, wine, come drink to me only with thine eyes, and I will pledge with mine. Milk, bread, flowing streams, all the standard images of beauty, gold and gems, love combined with the sadness of the passage of time. To the virgins to make much of time, for example. And these are the poems of Shakespeare, of Jonson, Marlowe, Robert Herrick, Edmund Spenser, Thomas Campion, all great names. Next to the Elizabethan, overlapping, they all overlap, 1600 to 1660, it should say, that will correct that. This is a time of very, very unusual poetry, because now it's the poetry of the intellectuals. It's the time of the rise of science, and where the old poems of the Elizabethans might have used the gods of Greece and Rome. They might be about Thor or Athena, something like that. The metaphysical poems will be about Christianity and Christ and the saints. But at the same time, they're also about voyages and discoveries and the new science. These are, if one of these poets writes a love poem, I'm using these mechanical scissors as a pointer, as an example. If a metaphysical poet writes a love poem, he's just as likely to compare his love to fishing tackle, as John Donne does, or to a telescope. They love to take unlike images and place them together, like love and trout fishing, or faithfulness and compass legs. That's one of John Donne's also. The typical poets of the metaphysical period were John Donne, George Herbert, who wrote some wonderful simple surface religious poems that were intended to show ordinary people the complex workings of faith and belief in God. Richard Crashaw, the great Sir Walter Raleigh, and John Milton, who wrote the epic Paradise Lost, about the war in heaven and hell between God and the fallen angel Lucifer. Then we have the Cavaliers, who are kind of the good old boys of English literature in a way. The poems were rather like the Elizabethans with guns. They tended to be the nobility of England, and at a time when the common people, the Puritans, were rising up against the king, and they actually took Charles I, and he was beheaded. And a great time of great upheaval, and the lords, the wealthy lords, who loved guns and dogs and swords and horses, were very much in support of their king. They tried to rescue their king. A great civil war racked England. The Cavalier poets wrote poems, and their poems were often concerns of young sporting men. The unfaithfulness of women, for example. Out upon it I have loved 3 whole days together, and I am like to love thee 3 days more, if it prove fair weather, something like that. Or of heroism. I could not love thee dear so much, loved I not honor more. The Cavaliers who were often put in jail, they were imprisoned by Puritan forces, and sometimes wrote poems to their loved ones before they themselves were beheaded, and sometimes released. Typical poets of that period are the great John Suckling, Richard Lovelace, and Andrew Marvell.